I live alone on 40 acres of land that stretches like a forgotten blanket across the edge of a town that barely notices it exists. No neighbors, no streetlights, no shared walls, just the house, the fields, and me. I tell people I like the quiet. That's the polite version. The truth is, I like the control. No one to argue with, no one to walk in unannounced, no one to judge how I live my life. Solitude is a kind of armor. That changed one fall evening when I was packing up my yard for winter. The air was thick and still, like the world had paused its breath. I was stacking tools in my old wooden shed when I saw him. A man walking down the empty road that cuts past my driveway. Not a local farmer, not a hiker. Just jeans, a dark jacket, hands in pockets. No bag, no hat. He didn't glance at my property, but something about his gait made my skin crawl. It was off-kilter, like a marionette puppet mimicking a human walk. I brushed it off as a drifter and went inside. But that image, his too perfect mimicry of a normal person, stuck in my brain. By the time dusk turned into that deep rural darkness, I realized the world beyond my walls had gone silent. No rustling trees, no coyotes, not even the distant hum of the road. Just me, my house, and the unnatural stillness. Then, from the direction of the shed, a single, hollow thud. Wood on wood. The door hitting its frame. I told myself it was the wind. I always lock that shed door because it warps in the rain and is a pain to fix. But when I went out, it was wide open. No footprints, no sign of anything disturbed. I closed it, slid the bolt, and tested it twice. Walking back to the house, I felt that hunted feeling. The sense that something was matching my steps, just beyond the edge of the light. I scanned the field, half expecting to catch someone mid-step, pretending they hadn't been there at all. Inside, the air smelled faintly of earth, like damp soil and old leaves. I thought I'd tracked something in until I saw it. A partial shoe print, dark and fresh, angled away from the door instead of toward it. It led down the hallway, a stain of dirt and something smeared, heading straight for my spare room. My chest tightened in that slow, cold way that comes when your mind already knows what your eyes haven't fully registered yet. Somebody had been in my house while I was out at the shed. Possibly still was. I grabbed my rifle, the one I keep loaded but mostly for show. It's not that I'm paranoid. It's that I've always believed in being prepared. You don't live alone on that much land without learning to trust your instincts. I followed the print down the hall, each step feeling like I was shrinking into a smaller and smaller room, even though I was technically going deeper into the house. The spare bedroom door was mostly closed, just a sliver of dark between the door and the frame. On instinct, I pressed my ear against the wood. There it was. Breathing. Not panicked, not excited. Just steady, patient. Like whoever was in there had all the time in the world. Before I could talk myself out of it, the doorknob twisted under my hand, not yanked, but turned with this slow, deliberate pressure. I stepped back as the door opened, and I finally saw him. He looked wrong. Not monstrous wrong, but in that uncanny way where every detail is almost, but not quite, familiar. His hair was cut like mine. He was about my height. Even his clothes were similar to stuff I owned. But his face, it was like someone had tried to draw me from a blurry memory and missed by a few crucial strokes. The angles were off. His eyes were a shade too dark. His mouth a fraction too wide. He held an old shovel, the one I keep in the shed, with both hands like a weapon. There was dirt caked all the way up the handle, and something darker under his fingernails. We stared at each other, my rifle leveled at his chest, his grip tightening on the shovel. The rage in his eyes wasn't random. It was focused, like he was furious at me personally, like I'd taken something from him. My brain kept snagging on the fact that I recognized the scar along his jawline. I have it too, from when I fell off my bike as a kid. I yelled at him to drop the shovel and get out, but my voice cracked, too thin to match the weight of what was happening. He tilted his head, like he was analyzing the sound. Then, as if he'd made a decision, he gave me this tiny, resentful half-smile and hurled the shovel toward me. I flinched and staggered back. By the time I recovered, he'd turned and climbed out the spare room window in one fluid motion, disappearing into the field without so much as a backward glance. I called the sheriff's office, but deep down I knew they weren't going to find anything. The deputy who showed up was polite, but his eyes carried that "we've seen this before" fatigue. He walked through the house, checked windows, looked under beds, took photos. "No footprints outside," he said. "No broken locks. No sign of forced entry." He glanced at the spare room door, then at me. "You sure you didn't maybe surprise a local kid?" he asked. "Or someone who thought this was their place?" I shook my head. He was at least my age, my build, and he had that scar. The deputy shrugged. "People look alike. Happens all the time." He didn't believe me. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. He took my statement, scribbled something on his clipboard, and left a business card. "That's all we can do," he said, stepping back outside. "If anything else happens, call us." I stood in the hallway after he left, staring at the spare room door. It was closed now, locked, but the memory of that breathing, steady, patient, was still there. That night, I barely slept. When I did, I dreamed of standing in my own field, watching my house from the outside, unable to get in. The next morning, I went into the spare room in daylight. The bed was made, the window shut from the inside. There were only two things out of place. First, the old family photo I keep on the dresser. In it, I'm about 8, standing with my parents. Had been moved so it faced the bed instead of the door. Second, the mirror on the wall had a smear right where my face would be if I stood in front of it, like someone had dragged their fingers down it, scratching at an image that wasn't quite right. Days passed, but the house didn't get quieter. It just got emptier. I started sleeping with the lights on, kept the rifle within arm's reach, checked the locks on every door 3 times a night. But the silence wasn't the problem anymore. It was the feeling that I was being watched. I'd catch myself staring at reflections in windows, half expecting to see a second version of myself just behind me. I'd hear the faintest scrape of something moving in the walls, like dry leaves brushing against plaster. The spare room became a ghost room. I avoided it. I kept the door shut, the lights off. I told myself it was just my brain replaying the image of that man with the shovel. But then came the nights when I'd wake up to the sound of breathing again. Steady, patient, coming from the hallway. Not from the spare room this time, from the kitchen. I'd sit up in bed, heart hammering, listening to the silence that felt too thick. One night, I decided enough was enough. I grabbed the rifle, turned on every light in the house, and walked through room by room. Nothing. But in the kitchen, I noticed something odd. A smudge on the counter, near the stove. Wet, smelling faintly of earth. Like someone had been leaning against it, listening. I wiped it away, but it came back the next night, and the next. Each time the smudge was in a slightly different spot. Like whoever was doing it was moving around, trying to stay hidden, but unable to resist the urge to touch something. It felt less like a break-in, and more like someone was practicing being me. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom, started sleeping in the living room, where I could see the whole house from one angle. I told myself it was temporary, that I was just being dramatic, but the house didn't believe me. One night I woke up to the sound of the front door opening. Not the soft click of a key, not the creak of old hinges, a heavy, deliberate push, like someone was testing how much force it would take. I sat up, rifle in hand, and listened. Silence. Then, From the hallway, the faintest sound of footsteps. Not walking, just shifting weight. Like someone standing still but refusing to be invisible. I stood, moved toward the hallway, and called out, "I know you're there!" No answer. Just the quiet hum of the house, waiting. I stepped into the hallway. The air felt colder here, sharper. And then I saw it. In the mirror on the wall, just past the spare room door, there was a reflection that didn't match what I saw in front of me. Me, except not me. The reflection was wearing the same clothes, had the same haircut, but its face was wrong. Too still. Too perfect. Like a mask carved from memory. It smiled. Not a real smile. A stretched, unnatural curve of lips that didn't belong to a real mouth. And then it turned its head slowly, deliberately, to look off into the dark part of the house where the light didn't reach. Like it was waiting for someone else. I blinked. The mirror was empty. Just me. But the feeling in the house hadn't changed. It still knew I was there. It still wanted me to know that whatever I thought was mine, my house, my land, my solitude, was never really mine at all. I was 18 the year I learned that home is just a word we use until something proves us wrong. My parents traveled a lot for work. By then, me staying alone wasn't a big production. I was the responsible teenager. Feed the cat, bring in the mail, lock the doors, don't throw a party. In return, I got a rare commodity: silence. No one asking where I was going, no one telling me to turn the TV down. It was early summer. The house felt like a private universe. I had every light I liked on, every show queued up, my phone in one hand and a bag of chips in the other. Outside, the sky was that deep indigo where your reflection in the window looks like a stranger if you glance too fast. I remember thinking, bizarrely, how safe it felt, how controlled. Around midnight, 3 knocks broke that illusion. Not frantic, not cautious. 3 slow, measured thuds on the front door, the kind that sound like someone practiced them. For a second, I moved on autopilot. Home equals safe, door equals formality. You open, that's what you do. My hand wrapped around the knob and stopped. It wasn't a thought so much as a full-body red flag. Nobody comes here at midnight. We don't have close neighbors. My parents weren't due back for 3 days. There was no logical universe where a friendly visitor was at our door. I pulled my hand back, suddenly aware of how alone I actually was. The house, which had felt big, and mine, suddenly seemed full of corners I couldn't see from where I stood. I checked the peephole. That was the last normal action of that night. 2 men stood on the porch. They were too stiff to be casual, too coordinated to be random. Dark jackets, dark pants, not uniforms, but almost matching. The kind of clothes people wear when they want to look professional without actually being attached to anything official. No pizza boxes, no clipboards, no delivery truck in the driveway. They weren't looking at the door. They were staring straight ahead, like they were waiting for a cue. After a beat, one of them spoke. "We're here to speak with Mr. and Mrs. Ian," he said. My parents' last name, perfectly pronounced. The tone was wrong, though. It sounded rehearsed, like a line in a play. He didn't say your parents or the homeowners, just their names, like he knew them without knowing them. Every instinct in me screamed to stay silent. I could feel my pulse in my ears. The soft buzz of the ceiling light above me sounded like static. The air between my mouth and the door felt too fragile to risk words. I held my breath. They waited another moment, then glanced at each other. One muttered something I couldn't catch. Then they stepped out of the peephole's view. I didn't hear a car door. No engine turning over. Just the fridge humming behind me and the blood rushing in my head. I should have called someone then. My parents. A neighbor. 911. Instead, I did what people do when they're half scared and half in denial. I went back to the living room, sat on the couch, and pretended if I never unpaused the TV, the moment at the door wouldn't matter. I didn't turn the sound back on, though. Every groan of the house suddenly had edges. A couple of minutes later, I heard it. Footsteps along the side of the house where there is no sidewalk. Just dirt and weeds. Slow, measured steps. Too heavy to be an animal. Too hesitant to be normal. I moved to the back of the house and peeked through a tiny crack between the curtains. They were in the yard, not leaving, pivoting. One of them was slipping something slender and metallic from his pocket, working the latch on the back gate like he already knew how it was built. The other kept looking up at the dark windows, not scared, expectant. They hadn't gone away. They'd gone around. Panic is weird. It doesn't hit all at once. It arrives in layers. First layer. They're not supposed to be there. Second, they never left. They just chose a different entrance. Third, cold and clear. They're not here to talk. While one of them tested the back door, pressing, stepping back, looking at the frame like a contractor might, the other scanned the second-story windows. I backed away from the curtains like the glass had teeth. My phone was suddenly the heaviest thing I'd ever held. I texted my parents, "Call me now." Then I didn't wait. I dialed 911. I kept my voice low as I moved through the house, whispering to the dispatcher, trying to balance speed and silence. "There are 2 men at my house," I said. "They tried the front door and now they're in the backyard. My parents are out of town. I'm alone." "Stay on the line," she said. "Can you get somewhere safe you can lock?" The garage. It had a solid door to the house, no windows. I eased into it and clicked the door closed, heart hammering. Right after she told me officers were on their way, something metallic popped from the back of the house, hard enough that I felt it through the wall, the deadbolt giving way. Then the back door shut. My house has this specific echo when that door closes. A low, heavy thud through the floorboards. I'd felt it 1,000 times from upstairs. Hearing it from the dark garage felt like listening to someone else's heartbeat beating in my chest. Their footsteps inside were controlled. Not the hurried shuffle of thieves, not the random wandering of drunk idiots. Slow, deliberate, weight spread out like they were savoring the quiet. I could trace their route by sound. Kitchen, dining room, hallway, then the stairs. They went up like they'd done it before. Like they knew there was nothing for them on the first floor worth taking. One of them flicked a light switch. Another, probably surprised to find most of the house already dark. They spoke in low, clipped phrases I couldn't fully make out, except one word: wait. It came out of one of them in this tone that sounded like both an order and a summary. Wait. As in, wait here. As in, this is what we're here to do. Upstairs, doors opened and closed. Not dresser drawers, not cabinets. Full doors, bedroom, bathroom, closet, another bedroom. Then one door shut very softly, and the house went still. The dispatcher kept asking if I could hear them, if I was okay. I realized at some point I'd stopped answering out loud, afraid even my whisper would ride the air vents up to them. Time fell apart. 10 minutes felt like an hour spent under a boot. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't move at all except to breathe as quietly as I could. The garage was dark except for the thin LED light on the opener. My own shadow on the cement looked like someone else hunched there. I could still hear them above me. Not moving exactly, but present. A weight on the ceiling. In that weird, stretched-out time, my brain did something I hated for. It started filling in the blanks. I could see them in my mind as clearly as if I'd stuck my head around the corner. Both of them in my parents' bedroom. The biggest room, the one you'd automatically gravitate to if you were planning an entrance. sitting on the bed, in the dark or near dark, facing the door, maybe one on each side of the frame, maybe both at the foot, maybe one standing, one sitting. It doesn't matter. The shape of it was the point. Waiting. I knew in a way that bypassed logic that if my parents had actually been due home that night, they would have walked straight into that. Keys in the front door, casual conversation about their trip, bags in hand, lights off because they'd think everyone was asleep, up the stairs, down the hallway, into a room where two men already knew their names. The dispatcher said, "They're almost there. Stay with me." Then, the crunch of tires on gravel, not fast enough to be a chase, but fast enough to mean business. No sirens, just presence. The house above me came to life. Fast footsteps across the upstairs hall. A door slamming. Hissed arguing, more urgent than before. The back door opened again. Officers shouting commands, their voices echoing in a way the men's hadn't. "The police are entering now," the dispatcher said, calm but with this undercurrent like, "Now we see which way this goes." They went straight upstairs. They didn't need anyone to tell them that's where the wrongness lived. Another voice came around the outside, close to the garage door. They knocked. Firm, but not pounding. They said my name through the wood over and over until I finally croaked, "Yeah." When I stepped out into my own driveway, my quiet, normal-looking house was lit in police red and blue. It looked like a crime scene before a crime had time to finish. They walked me to the sidewalk. I watched as two men in dark jackets came down my front steps in handcuffs. They didn't look at me. That was somehow worse. They didn't resist. That's something the officers kept repeating. They went quietly. They complied. They had no duffel bags full of electronics, no pillowcases full of jewelry, no visible weapons, just those heavy jackets and a script they'd half unfinished. At the station, they gave almost nothing up. Basic info. Names that might have been real. No priors in the system that screamed monster. Just minor crap. Trespass, shoplifting, whatever. They knew my parents' full names. Our address. That my parents traveled often. Roughly how long they were usually gone. Later, my parents checked their digital lives for leaks. No obvious social media oversharing. No travel photos posted in real time. No public calendars. The airline miles account was secure. The email confirmed tickets, sure, but not our address. We never did figure out how these men pieced it together, or how many houses they'd tried this on before. In the end, the cops could only hit them with breaking and entering an attempted burglary. There was no weapon on them, no injury, no stolen property. Nothing happened, officially. That's what haunts me, because something absolutely was happening. It just hadn't finished. My parents tried to make it a teachable moment. "See?" my mom said. "Never open the door that late. You did the right thing." She wasn't wrong, but it didn't feel like the point. The point to me was that their plan didn't start with a door. It started with a name, with a schedule, with a mental blueprint of our house. And that when that plan hit a snag, my silence, my refusal to answer, they didn't give up. They adapted. They went around. I can't prove this, but I know deep in that irrational, instinctive place that if I'd answered, "They're not home, it's just me," something in them would have clicked sideways. The scene upstairs would have been different. The target would have shifted. And I might not be here to tell the story in a casual horror thread on the internet. Now, whenever my parents leave town, I feel this continuation. Not fear of a new thing, but dread of something resuming where it left off. Sometimes a car will idle too long on our street at night. The headlights will wash over our front door. I'll pause whatever I'm watching, stand in the hallway, and listen, just to be sure. Sometimes I swear I can feel the echo of those 3 practiced knocks in my bones. Not yet on the door. Just rehearsing, waiting for the right timing. the right names, the right house that still thinks nothing like that could ever happen here. I didn't notice my life getting smaller. That's the worst part. It wasn't some dramatic collapse, just a slow tightening of a loop. Work, drive home, door shuts, TV on, brain off. I work in logistics, which is a fancy way of saying I argue with spreadsheets and tracking numbers until they behave. It's not a bad job, just gray. My days are fluorescent lit and climate controlled. My nights are blue lit and silent. When I bought my split level 3 years ago, everyone said the same thing. Nice starter place, good neighborhood. It looked like every other house on the block. Same siding, same half-hearted landscaping, same porch lights that freaked out over squirrels. I told myself I'd get to know the neighbors. I didn't. I waved a couple of times, then started timing my exits to avoid eye contact. My social life shrank down to one person, Mark, a guy from work who refused to let me disappear completely. He'd drag me out for wings or beers, keep me on the group chat, remind people I existed. That December, he started calling me Ghost. "You're like a rumor," he said once. "People at work are like, is he still here? Did he die at his desk?" "I'm just tired," I always said, which was true. But it wasn't the whole story. Tired is safe. Tired is easy. Tired is how you justify not noticing that no one would miss you for a few days if your porch light burned out and never turned back on. Mark's New Year's party was his last stand against my hermit phase. "You're coming," he said. "This isn't a question. You can sit in the corner and judge everyone, I don't care. Just show up." I went because saying no felt like admitting something I wasn't ready to name. The party was exactly what you'd expect. Too loud, too warm, too many conversations you drift in and out of without actually connecting with anyone. I drank cheap whiskey from red cups because it filled the silence when I couldn't think of small talk. Every time I checked my phone, the time was later than I thought. Around 1:30 a.m., I bailed. Told Mark I had an Uber coming and would get my car tomorrow. The ride home was quiet, streets empty. When the driver left me at the curb, the neighborhood felt hollow. No fireworks yet, no kids, just a kind of suspended stillness. I got inside, maybe locked the door, maybe didn't. I thought I did. The act is so automatic I don't have a clean memory of it, just the feeling of key and lock, twist, click. I was drunk enough that probably felt like definitely. I collapsed on the couch fully dressed, shoes kicked halfway off, the remote digging into my hip. I didn't even turn on the TV. The darkness felt like mercy. The doorbell cut through my sleep like a blade. 4, maybe 5 hard presses in a row. Too urgent to be a drunk neighbor. Too impatient to be a delivery. I remember surfacing, disoriented, heart starting to pound. I did nothing. I lay there, heavy as wet sand, thinking, if I don't move, it stops being my problem. After a few seconds, it did stop. No knocks, no voices. My body, desperate for rest or escape or both, dragged me back under. I wish I could say I didn't know better. The truth is, I chose not to know anything at all. The next time I woke up, it wasn't to a sound, it was to a feeling. That cliché someone's watching you thing, it's real. It's like your nervous system wakes up before your thoughts do. My eyelids felt glued down, but every instinct I had was suddenly screaming. The darkness was wrong. My living room usually has this faint orange haze from the streetlights, but now it was almost pure black. As my eyes adjusted, I saw that thin stripe of light on the hallway wall, pale and still. The front door was open, just a few inches. Enough that the night bled in, enough that I knew, with absolute certainty, that I had not done that. Before panic had fully formed, I heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Not clumsy, not cautious, just normal. The way I walked when I was half awake, going to grab laundry or my phone charger. Floorboards creaked exactly where I knew they would. My whole body went cold. I slid off the couch like I was trying not to wake something. Crouched behind it, heart slamming so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears. 2 sets of footsteps, 2 different weights. A door opened. My bedroom. The tiny rattle of hangers, drawers sliding, closet doors bumping and re-bumping like someone didn't quite push them closed. A man's voice, casual, empty. Told you. Another voice, more annoyed. People stash stuff. Check all of it. Evan screwed up because he got lazy. They weren't whispering. They weren't rushing. They sounded like guys at the end of a shift, complaining about a coworker while they finished their checklist. They came downstairs. One went toward the kitchen. I heard the fridge door suck open, cabinets thud. The other's footsteps headed straight for the living room. I held my breath until my chest burned. He walked around the coffee table. I heard the remote clatter to the floor, batteries rolling. I felt his presence on the other side of the couch, the air shifting. He leaned over. I saw his shadow stretch across the wall, his arm reaching down between the cushions. His hand passed inches above my head, close enough that I could have grabbed him. He didn't look down. "Nothing," he muttered. "TV's cheap anyway. Not worth it." He straightened up, already bored. For a second, it felt less like I'd hidden well, and more like I just didn't register, like I wasn't part of the inventory. "Grab the router and we're good," he called. "He's a light packer." They laughed again as they walked to the door. "Door was practically open," one said. "People make this too easy." "He's blackout somewhere," the other replied. "We're just helping him declutter." The door closed with a soft, final click. The silence afterward felt thicker than the dark. I don't remember dialing 911. I remember my fingers not working right, the phone almost slipping, my voice coming out too quiet when the dispatcher answered. "2 men were just in my house," I said. "They took stuff. I'm still here. I was here." Saying that last part felt important, like if I didn't, they'd file this under empty home burglary and never think about me again. The cops were polite in that detached way that tells you you're not the worst thing they've seen tonight. They walked through my overturned drawers, the open closets, the missing electronics, narrating as they went like it was a training video. "No forced entry," the older one said near the door. He ran a thumb along the latch. "See that? Scuff marks. Small, but there. Tiny scratches I'd never noticed. Little half-moons in the paint where something had pressed or jimmied again and again. Someone's been testing this," he said. "Pushing, pulling, seeing if it gives. Probably over a few nights." I felt weirdly offended, like I'd failed some exam without knowing I was taking it. My neighbor across the street, Halpern, shuffled over in his slippers when the cruisers pulled away. "Everything okay?" "Got robbed," I said. The word felt foreign in my mouth. He frowned. "Huh. Should have said something. I've seen a car just sitting out here a few nights lately. Small, dark SUV, lights off, 2 guys inside. Thought they were waiting for someone. Didn't have a plate light." "How many nights?" I asked. He shrugged. 3, 4, between 10 and midnight. Right about when you get home from work, come to think of it. Suddenly I could see it. Me, this predictable blip on their schedule. Garage light on at the same time every night. Porch light, TV glow. Me not talking to anyone. Me not being known by anyone on this street well enough for them to walk over and say, "Hey, that car looks weird." The cops left. Halpern went back to his lawn obsession. I stood in my own kitchen feeling like I was walking through a crime scene that happened to share my name. People tell you, at least you weren't hurt. At least you didn't wake up to them standing over you. It could have been so much worse. They mean well. They're not wrong. But what they don't understand is that my brain already lives in the place where it was worse. I can't stop running the alternate cut of that night. In that one, the doorbell rings, and instead of freezing, I do the normal, adult thing. I get up. I'm annoyed, a little drunk, maybe thinking it's a neighbor with a noise complaint or a rideshare mix-up. I don't check the peephole. I crack the door without really engaging my brain. They're there. Same guys, same bored eyes, work night energy. One smiles, shows me something. Badge, ID, package, who knows? Maybe they say they saw my car at my friend's place, ask if I lent it out. Something that gets me to open the door a little wider, drop my guard. In that version, the cops don't find scuff marks at my door. They find blood on the carpet. Maybe they don't find me at all. Reality isn't that dramatic, thank God. But the line between what happened and what could have happened feels paper thin. Now, every time I wake up at 3 a.m., and it happens a lot, I lie there listening, not hearing footsteps exactly, but sensing some leftover echo of them. I feel like I've accidentally slid into the wrong timeline where I wasn't supposed to be on that couch, where they planned around me being gone. It messes with your head, realizing there are people out there who know your habits more clearly than your friends do, who have watched your lights, your comings and goings, your patterns, who see you not as a person, but as Tuesday, 10:30 p.m., likely empty. I added cameras, better locks, a bigger deadbolt plate. I joined the stupid neighborhood Facebook group I'd been ignoring. I learned my neighbors' names, not because I suddenly love small talk, but because I understand now that being a total ghost, it doesn't make you invisible. It just makes you easy. If you've ever scrolled through rental listings with your brain half offline, you know the type of house I'm talking about. I was visiting my brother 3 years ago. He lives in a cramped one-bedroom with a roommate who basically lives in the kitchen. I didn't want to be the third body on their floor, and hotels in his area were stupid expensive, so I went the budget route. Short-term rental, entire place, low nightly rate, clean photos. The listing pictures showed a small, generic house. Beige walls, basic couch. Minimalist, if you're being kind. Staged for resale, if you're being honest. The reviews were short but positive. Clean. Good value. Convenient location. When I pulled up after a 6-hour drive, my first thought was that it looked like a model home they forgot to unbuild. The lawn was too neat, the blinds all at the same height. No kids' bikes or lawn chairs, just a house-shaped object on a quiet street. Inside, it felt worse. There was furniture, but it had that thrown-together feel, like someone had walked through a thrift store and said, "That'll photograph fine." No books, no personal stuff, no weird knickknacks, just surfaces and angles. The air smelled wrong. Too clean, but not in a fresh way. More like an overused cleaning product layered over something else. Bleach, and something metallic hiding underneath. I told myself I was being dramatic. I was tired, stiff from the drive, irritable. I tossed my duffel on the neatly made bed, met my brother for dinner, and joked about my serial killer Airbnb. "Text me if a clown comes out of the vents," he said. I laughed. We both did. It felt like the kind of cheap, throwaway joke the universe loves to pin to a bulletin board. I got back to the house around 11 p.m., full of diner food and that sleepy road trip haze. I double-checked the code on the keypad, locked the deadbolt, and even tugged the door to feel it catch. The kind of overcautious thing you do more for your own anxiety than actual safety. Inside, the quiet felt heavy. No building hum, no neighbors through the walls, just the fridge cycling and the occasional car far off on the main road. I FaceTimed my brother for a bit, turned off the lamps, and crashed in the bedroom. The blackout curtains did their job too well. Once I closed my eyes, the world went away. Until about 3 a.m., I woke up like someone had snapped their fingers next to my ear. No dream, no gradual surfacing, just instant awareness and a feeling like I'd just missed something. The dark was total. My brain started trying to fill it, shapes in corners, shifts in the ceiling. I lay there, holding my breath, and that's when I heard it. Click. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the unmistakable, soft, controlled sound of a door latch engaging somewhere down the short hallway. No footsteps before it. No footsteps after. Just that single, careful sound, like someone easing a door shut so it wouldn't slam. Every part of me went cold. The thought came in fully formed. Someone has a key. I lay there for what might have been 5 minutes or 30, listening to a silence that suddenly felt packed with attention. My heartbeat was so loud in my ears it almost masked everything else. Finally, I swung my legs out of bed, grabbed my phone, and edged into the hall. The front door looked off. The deadbolt was turned the wrong way. The handle sat slightly open, the rubber weather strip not fully compressed. I knew I'd locked it. I shut it, locked it again, triple-checked it like an OCD ritual. I didn't call 911. It felt too big for something that could still be explained by the cleaner forgot. Instead, I called the non-emergency line. The dispatcher listened, didn't sound surprised at all, and sent a patrol car just to check things out. 2 officers walked through the house with flashlights, opened closets, looked at windows. No signs of forced entry. No open doors. They were polite but radiated that we've seen nervous travelers before energy. Honestly, one of them said, these places see a lot of foot traffic. Cleaners, owners, handymen. Stuff happens. Change the code. Keep everything locked. You'll be fine. The owner texted first thing in the morning. Long apology. New code. Lots of, this has never happened before. I wanted to believe that. To file it away as a weird but ultimately harmless story. If I'd listened to the part of me that didn't buy it, I would have checked into a hotel that day. I didn't. The second night started normal enough. That's what makes what happened feel worse. It slid in sideways, not as some cinematic horror moment, but as a series of small, dismissible things. All day, the house made me uneasy. The chemical smell seemed stronger, like the air had been scrubbed and something under it was still trying to leak through. Every room felt unused, despite the fact that I was there. Like my presence hadn't registered. My brother suggested I just crash at his place. Dude, our couch is terrible, he said. But bad furniture beats haunted knockoff IKEA. I laughed it off. I didn't want to be the needy sibling. Didn't want to deal with his roommate. Didn't want to admit I was spooked by a house. You're overthinking it, I told myself, locking the door again that night. New place, weird vibes, brain filling in gaps. Around 11, I was sprawled on the living room couch with the TV on silent, half watching, half scrolling my phone. The hallway was visible in my peripheral vision, a dark rectangle of space leading to the bedroom and bathroom. That's when I heard it, the sound of someone breathing behind me. Not a cartoonish gasp, just a slow, wet exhale through a nose. Human. Close. I whipped around so fast I made myself dizzy. The couch, the TV, the doorway. Nothing. No one. But the dark of the hallway had a presence to it. The only way I can describe it is that the shadows looked arranged. Like someone had just stepped out of the line of sight and left their outline behind. Get a grip, I muttered. I did the anxious person thing, overcompensation through control. I walked the whole house, opened every closet, checked under the bed, pushed the shower curtain all the way aside, stared at the undersink cabinet like a raccoon was going to wink at me. Nothing. The smell in the bedroom was stronger, though. Bleach, mildew, and an edge of something sour and metallic under it, like old coins rubbed between fingers. I told myself it was just old pipes. Back in the living room, I turned the TV volume on low, some background noise to drown out the house's personality. 10 minutes later, from the bedroom, I heard the closet door slide shut. You know the sound of those cheap sliding doors on a metal track? It was that. A slow, controlled shk, then the soft bump of it settling into place. I hadn't gone near the closet. I was sure of it. My reality split. Rational me, Old house, uneven floors, draft. Door drifted shut. That's it. Animal me. There is something in that room, and it is closing itself off. I stared down the hallway, lamp in one hand like I was in some bad reenactment. The longer I waited, the more the air felt dense, like the hallway had filled with a substance thicker than oxygen. Eventually, I walked toward the bedroom, every step a bad decision I'd already committed to making. The closer I got, the more that coppery smell sharpened, threading into the back of my throat. The closet door was closed. There was a sliver of darkness where the panels met, a seam too narrow for anything to look through, but my brain supplied eyes anyway. I don't know why I started talking. Maybe I'd seen too many movies. Maybe I was trying to convince myself I wasn't terrified enough to run. "I know someone's in there," I said, which sounded shaky and pathetic in the stillness. "I've already called the cops once. I'll do it again." My voice didn't bounce around like normal. It felt like the room swallowed it. No answer, obviously. No sorry, wrong rental. No burst of adrenaline and sprint from an intruder. Just the hum of the house and that smell pushing at the edges of my composure. I reached out. My hand closed around the cheap little finger groove in the closet panel. Just as I started to pull, the bedroom light went out. Not a flicker. A clean cut. 1 second I'm staring at the door. The next, I'm in absolute black. I froze. In that dark, all my senses tried to climb into my ears at once. That's when I felt it more than heard it. Weight shifting. A shoe, because it had that rubber on wood drag. Scuffing once. Inside the closet. 6 inches, maybe a foot, from where I stood. There is a level of fear that bypasses language. Nothing witty, nothing rational. Just an animal scream in your nervous system. I dropped the lamp without realizing it. My body had already decided to run. I bolted. Down the hallway, hands scraping the wall to orient myself. Into the living room, where the light from the street lamps outside made everything look washed out and unreal. The deadbolt suddenly felt like a puzzle I'd never solved before, fingers fumbling. All I could picture was that closet door sliding open behind me, silently, something stepping out into the hall. I yanked the front door open and didn't close it behind me. Just burst out onto the front stoop into the cold night air, like I'd been underwater too long. Under the wash of a nearby streetlight, I finally dialed 911 with fingers that couldn't hold still. "Short-term rental," I told the dispatcher, voice shaking. "Someone's in the house. I don't know how. I heard, I think they're in the bedroom closet." The light went out. She kept me talking until the sirens got close. I didn't go back in. Watching cops enter a place you just fled from is a weird experience. Part of you hopes they find someone, just to prove you're not crazy. Another part of you really, really hopes they don't. They swept the house, guns drawn at first, then relaxing into that slightly annoyed professionalism when nothing lunged at them. "No one inside," one of them said after a few minutes. "Windows secured, doors intact." The landlord, middle-aged woman, practical haircut, showed up in sweatpants, out of breath and apologizing before she even hit the porch. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I've never had... This is... Oh my God." The officers brought us into the bedroom last. The smell hit me again, thick and chemical and coppery. One of them slid the closet door open. It was just a closet. Single bar, plastic hangers, extra pillows and plastic wrap on the shelf, shoes lined up too neatly. I thought, maybe I broke. Maybe this is what a panic attack does to your senses. Then the officer who'd opened the door frowned and stepped closer to the inside panel. "Ma'am," he said to the landlord, "you aware of this?" On the inside of the closet door, down low where you wouldn't see it unless you were looking, was a metal latch, newer than the door, a simple sliding bolt that could be locked from within. "That's not supposed to be there," the landlord said immediately. Her voice had that too quick quality of someone reacting before their brain could catch up. "That's not..." I didn't install that. The chemical smell seemed to tighten in that small space. One of the officers stepped back, hand over his mouth briefly, like he'd caught a whiff of something he couldn't place and didn't want to. They didn't say much in front of me after that. Some low murmurs between themselves, a couple of coded looks with the landlord. One of them took photos. Another radioed something in a calm, clipped tone. They suggested I find alternate accommodation for the night. The landlord offered, insisted on paying for, a hotel. I didn't argue. I watched the house recede in the rearview mirror and felt like the darkness in the bedroom was watching me go. For weeks after I went home, I checked the local news. Nothing about bodies found. Nothing about serial squatters. No arrests. The house didn't show up on any crime maps I could find. A month later, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the rental app and searched the neighborhood. The listing was gone. Relief flickered, until 2 weeks after that, when I saw what I'm 99% sure was the same house. Same street, same facade, slightly different angles in the photos. New host name, fresh listing, new furniture here and there. No mention of a recent incident. 5 stars. Reviews rolling in. So peaceful. Slept better here than I have in months. House feels very private. Perfect solo getaway. I stared at those words, thinking about the smell in that closet, the inside latch, the weight shift inches from my hand. Part of me wondered if what I heard those nights wasn't just someone in the walls or the closet now, but echoes of whoever had been in there before. People whose stays didn't end with them booking another trip. I've never reported the listing. I don't know what I'd even say that wouldn't sound like paranoia. All I know is that somewhere out there is a house whose walls have practiced this routine. A host who said, "That's not supposed to be there," like it was both true and not the whole truth. And a closet with a latch on the inside that didn't install itself. And strangers keep going there, looking for a cheap, peaceful place to sleep. It started with 3 dull thuds, spaced just far enough apart to sound intentional, not frantic, not friendly. Practiced. I was halfway off the couch before my brain caught up to my feet. We have a doorbell. Everyone who knows us uses the doorbell. The knocking itself should have been my first red flag. I padded down the hallway in socks, the house suddenly too quiet behind me. Our front door has one of those old warped peepholes that stretches faces like fisheye lenses, but you can still get a decent sense of who's out there. When I pressed my eye to it, my stomach did this slow rolling drop. 2 men, late 30s, maybe early 40s, both tall, both standing with that weird stiff posture that screams, trying to look authoritative. Dark jackets, dark pants, no visible badges, no logo, no clipboard, just anonymity and duplicate. They weren't looking at the peephole. They were staring straight ahead, like they were posing for an invisible camera. After a few seconds, the one on the left spoke. His voice had the tone of someone reading from a teleprompter. "We're here to speak with Mr. and Mrs. Ian." He said my parents' last name perfectly. No hesitation, no mispronunciation. It sliced clean through my half-asleep haze. Only people who actually know my parents, or have their information, say it right the first time. My hand was already on the doorknob, but something in me locked up. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just disappeared behind the wood. I hadn't decided not to talk. My body just chose for me. They waited, counted breaths. One of them shifted his weight, the smallest scrape of shoe on concrete. Then he turned his head slightly toward the other and muttered something low I couldn't catch. A moment later, they stepped out of the peephole's frame. No hello, no anyone home, no second knock, just gone. I waited for the sound of a car door, an engine, anything that would mark this as a normal interaction. Instead, the house swallowed everything. It was so quiet I could hear the ceiling light buzzing above me and my own heartbeat in my ears. Some part of me wanted to laugh it off. Wrong address, religious people, sales guys. But there was this colder piece, way in the center of my chest, that knew I had just avoided entering into something I didn't understand, and that whatever it was, wasn't finished. I backed away from the door and told myself I was being dramatic. I even went back to the couch and unpaused my show just to prove I could, but I didn't absorb a single frame. Every tiny noise in the house got amplified to 10 times its size. About 2 minutes later, I heard it, the faint crunch of gravel on the side of the house where no one ever walks. That strip is basically decorative weeds and dirt between us and the property line. There's no path, no gate, no reason for anyone to be there, unless they're trying not to be seen. I muted the TV again. The footsteps were slow, careful. One. Pause. Another. It sounded like they were rediscovering the layout, probing for weak spots. I moved to the back of the house and nudged the curtain barely an inch. The backyard was a flat smear of indigo, our patio table just a darker shape. Then my eyes adjusted, and there they were. The same two men, their outlines cutting against the yard. One was at the gate, crouched slightly, hands working the latch. The other stood a few feet back, angled so he could see every window at once. He tilted his head, scanning the second floor. For a second I had the sick, specific thought that he was counting bedrooms. Okay, no, I whispered to myself. Nope. I backed away from the glass, my heart climbing into my throat. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone, pulling it from my pocket. I texted my parents first. Pure panic logic. Me. Call me now. The message went through, little delivered checkmark, mocking how useless it was at that hour on a different time zone. Then I dialed 911. When the operator answered, my voice came out in this thin, shaky whisper I barely recognized. I gave the address, explained there were two men trying to get into the house. Are you somewhere safe inside the residence? She asked. Her voice was calm in that almost inhuman dispatcher way, as if this whole situation was a math problem. Kind of, I said. They're at the back. The front is locked, I think. Can you move to a more secure room and stay on the line? The closest place that made sense was the garage. It has a heavy interior door with a deadbolt and no windows. I moved as quietly as I could, every step feeling like a shout. As I eased, the door closed behind me. Something metallic popped from the back of the house. Not a knock, not a kick. The sound of hardware giving way. They'd forced the back door. I felt it in the studs more than heard it. Our house has its own internal language. Doors slam, pipes hum, appliances whine. That particular echo, the hollow thud of the back door shutting, was as familiar as my own voice. Hearing it from the wrong side of a locked garage felt like listening to someone else inhale using your lungs. Ma'am? The dispatcher said. Are you still there? Yeah, I whispered. They're inside. From inside the dark garage, everything in the house was translated into blunt vibrations through drywall and concrete. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, trying not to breathe too loud. Their footsteps came in like they owned the place. Slow, measured, definitely not the frantic shuffle of someone grabbing valuables. One pair was heavier, one a bit lighter, but their rhythm stayed almost identical. I could trace their path: kitchen tile, dining room wood, the subtle change to carpet at the base of the stairs. Two adult males inside the residence, the dispatcher repeated, more for the recording than for me. Officers are en route. Stay with me, okay? I wanted to ask her if anything about this sounded normal to her. Instead, I just said, okay, and listened. They went upstairs. Our staircase has one board that squeaks on the 5th step. I counted under my breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Squeak. 5. Then their weight shifted onto the 2nd floor. Drawers being rifled have a specific sound. Sharp pulls, wood hitting stops, objects clattering. What I heard instead was doors. Long, soft swishes as closet doors opened and closed. Hinges creaking on bedroom doors being tested. Every once in a while, one of them flicked a light switch. The soft click echoed down through the framing, but no new light filtered under the garage door. I had already turned everything off but the living room lamp. To them, it must have looked like a house that had gone to sleep hours ago. They weren't in any hurry. That was the worst part. No low hurry up, no sounds of bags or zippers, nothing that said, "We're here to grab and go." It felt like reconnaissance. Once, the lighter-footed one spoke loud enough that his voice bled through the ceiling. One word, clear and sharp. Wait. I don't know why that word bothered me so much. Maybe because there are two ways to hear it, as an order or as a description of what they were doing. Waiting. Above me, a door clicked shut. Softly, deliberately, then silence. Not the chaotic silence of people leaving, but the dense, intentional kind. A silence with weight. In my head, a picture assembled without my permission. My parents' bedroom. The bed. The two men seated on it or beside it, facing the doorway like a stage where the next actor hadn't come on yet. "How far out are the officers?" I whispered. "They're almost there," the dispatcher said. "I need you to stay where you are. Do not attempt to confront anyone. Do you understand?" I understood way too clearly. I understood that if my parents were due home that night, these men would probably still be upstairs, staged, practicing their lines for when the front door opened and familiar footsteps came down the hall. The realization hit hard enough to make my knees feel weak. I hadn't interrupted a burglary. I'd interrupted a plan. When the first squad car pulled up, they killed the siren before hitting our street. All I heard was the crunch of tires on gravel and the low murmur of radio chatter coming through someone's open window. Inside the house, the stillness burst. Feet pounded across the upstairs hallway. A door slammed, then another. One of them cursed under his breath, just a muffled syllable, but the tone was unmistakable. "Officers are entering now," the dispatcher said. "You're doing great. Stay put until they come to you." The back door opened again, this time with authority. Voices barked commands. "Sheriff's Department. Hands where I can see them." Boots thudding up the stairs, the controlled chaos of trained people stepping into someone else's mess. Another officer came around the side of the house and knocked gently on the interior garage door. "My name?" "It's the police. You can open up." I froze for a second. Every movie I'd ever seen flashed through my head. Someone faking a voice, baiting the victim. I called out, "Badge through the mail slot," before my brain could tell my mouth that was insane. There was a tiny pause, then a quiet chuckle. "Fair enough," the voice said, closer to normal now. "Unit 24. I'll back up so you can open it." I still checked through the peephole. He was there. A uniform, reflective vest, radio on his shoulder. I unbolted the door with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else. The house looked wrong in red and blue. Our neat, neutral walls were slashed with emergency colors, making everything look staged, like the set of one of those gritty reconstructions on true crime shows. They walked me outside while other officers moved in and out, their radios hissing. After what felt like a long time and also no time at all, 2 men were let out in cuffs. Same jackets, same stiff posture, now just slightly deflated. They didn't look scared. They looked annoyed. Like this was a delay. One of them scanned the crowd and his gaze skimmed past me for a microsecond. No recognition. No surprise. Just a flicker, like he was checking which variables had changed. "Do you know these men?" an officer asked me. I shook my head. "No, Never seen them. Later, I overheard snippets. No weapons found on them. No stolen property. No obvious tools beyond whatever they'd used to pop the back lock. When questioned, they gave names the cops clearly didn't buy, and addresses that led to vacant buildings. They knew my parents' full names. They knew our address. They knew our travel dates. Roughly 3 days. Home Sunday. Could be they got your info from a data breach, one detective said when my parents finally flew home and met with them. Or social media. People post more than they realize. My parents don't post anything. No boarding passes, no vacation shots. Their profiles might as well be dead. We're charging them with breaking and entering, the detective said. Unfortunately, that's all we can get to stick right now. My mom's voice cracked. That's it? They were in our house. Yes, ma'am, but they didn't harm anyone. They didn't take anything, and they're not talking. That night, after everyone left and the house was finally, painfully quiet, my dad tried to lighten it. See, he said, forcing a smile. You did everything right. You didn't open the door. You called 911. Lesson learned. He meant it as comfort. But don't open the door to strangers felt microscopic next to what had actually happened, because the scariest part wasn't that 2 men broke in. It was that they broke in and waited. Life has a messed up way of snapping back to normal after something like that. For everyone else, anyway. Locks get upgraded. A security system goes in. My parents add travel discretion to their list of rules. Then they go back to their flights and presentations and hotel points. I went back to kind of nothing. School, sure. Friends, sure. But mostly, living in the same house that had been rehearsed as a crime scene. Sleeping in the same bedroom under the same ceiling where 2 strangers had walked, paused, and decided to stay a while. For weeks I kept picturing what would have happened if their timing had been different. If my parents' flight had landed early, if traffic had been lighter, if their "we'll be home by 11" turned into 10 instead. I'd see it like a movie in my head. The front door unlocking, my mom calling out my name, my dad dropping his suitcase in the hall, light flipping on at the top of the stairs, 2 men standing in the doorway of the master bedroom saying my parents' names in that practiced tone. We're here to speak with Mr. and Mrs. Ian. I started noticing patterns I'd never paid attention to before. How predictable we were. The light we always left on over the stove. The habit of my dad checking the mail before taking off his shoes. My mom hanging her keys on the same hook every time. I could have written a script for our nightly routine. So could anyone watching long enough. That realization gutted whatever sense of safety I had left. I wasn't afraid of monsters or ghosts. I was afraid of rehearsal. Of people who practiced being harmless until the exact second they didn't need to be anymore. The legal process dragged on, then kind of fizzled, at least from what we were told. Without evidence of a bigger plan, the system treated it like a weird, failed break-in. A blip. The men pled to lesser charges. Time served, maybe probation. No one would say much. I still think about them, about how calm they were, about the way one of them said, "Wait," upstairs, and how that one word felt like the center of a larger sentence none of us got to hear. Here's what lives with me now. Every time my parents book a trip, I get that same sinking feeling in my stomach. Not that something new will happen, but that something old will resume. Like somewhere, someone still has a copy of the script labeled Ian House, Night Interior, and is just waiting for the right cast to line up again. Sometimes, late at night, when a car slows down outside, I mute whatever I'm watching and stand in the hallway. I just listen. For gravel crunching along the side of the house where no one should walk. For the back latch trembling. For 3 measured knocks and a voice saying my parents' names, ready to pick up right where they left off. If you've ever hit that point in life where any job starts to sound noble, You'll get where I was. I just walked out of a small office job that had turned into slow-motion hell. No yelling, no drama, just constant pressure and quiet gaslighting, until I couldn't tell if I was bad at my job or bad at existing. I quit without a plan. Savings dwindled faster than my pride. Rent notices started getting that bold red ink. So yeah, when I saw the help wanted flexible hours sign in the dusty window of a specialty shop in a dying strip mall, I went in. The place sold this weird mix of hobbyist junk, model kits, obscure board games, overpriced figurines. On a good day, it made maybe $11. The strip mall itself sat just off a state highway, the kind of place where people only slowed down if they missed their exit. My boss, Ron, was one of those guys who wore a company polo like it made him a CEO. He loved phrases like small business family and we all sacrifice. Translation: he went home at 8, I stayed until 10. You're young, he said during my interview. Nights won't bother you. And hey, quiet is easy, right? I told him I could handle it. I needed the paycheck more than I needed to feel safe. Quiet, I learned, is only easy until it starts watching you back. The plaza during the day was depressing. At night, it crossed into something else. By 8 p.m., the nail salon's neon open sign flicked off. The laundromat went from half busy to a single humming machine. The vape shop's owner would stand outside smoking, then vanish. After that, it was just me and the kind of silence you only get in failed commercial real estate. That's when I noticed him. The first time, I thought he was just a random guy killing time. Tall, gray hooded jacket, hands in pockets, standing near the edge of the lot where the light didn't quite reach. He faced our row of shops but never moved toward any door. Second time, same spot. Third time closer, sitting on the low curb by the laundromat, elbows on knees, head angled down. Hood up, face shadowed. I started calling him the Watcher in my head because it made it feel like a character in a story instead of a person in my life. I asked the lady at the laundromat once, trying to sound casual, "Hey, you see that guy in the gray hoodie a lot?" She barely looked up from her phone. "Which guy?" "Tall, hood up, just stands around." She shrugged. "People come and go. Long as they don't bother me, I don't notice." The vape shop guy claimed, "Oh yeah, dude's been around forever." Then, a beat later, "Or maybe I'm thinking of someone else." I never saw him go into a single shop. Never saw a car for him. He was just there. Far enough away to ignore if I wanted to. Close enough that pretending I didn't see him started to feel dishonest. I told myself he was probably just lonely, that the strip mall was the closest thing to company he had. That explanation worked. Until the night he moved closer. My third week there, my coworker texted me an hour before his shift. "Sorry man, sick as hell. Can't make it." I forwarded it to Ron. He replied almost instantly, "You'll be fine. After 8, it's a ghost town." He meant it as reassurance. It didn't feel like that. By 9:30, I'd had one customer, some guy buying a pack of card sleeves with crumpled bills. The rest of the time, I wiped already clean shelves and watched my reflection in the front glass. The Watcher was there. Not at the edge of the lot this time. He'd moved up, leaning against a lamppost directly opposite our store. The hood was up, hands in his pockets. The light behind him was blown out, so all I could see was a tall silhouette. I tried not to stare, told myself, "He's just a guy. Homeless maybe. Weird but not dangerous. If he wanted trouble, he would have started it already." At 9:50, the aisle lights flickered. One long blink, then 2 quick ones like they were trying to communicate something. The security monitor in the back stuttered into static for half a second, then came back. Old building, old wiring. I filed it under annoying but explainable. At 10 o'clock on the dot, I locked the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and went to count the drawer in the little back office. Bills, coins, the scratch of my pen on the closing sheet. The normal ritual started to calm me down. Then I heard it. A soft, slow drag along the front glass. Not knuckles. Fingernails. I stepped out from the office just far enough to see the door. The watcher was standing inches from the glass now, right up against it. His hood was angled down so sharply I couldn't see any part of his face, just darkness under the fabric. His left hand was flat on the door, fingers spread wide. From where I stood, it looked like he was feeling the glass, not knocking, not trying the handle, just connecting. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stayed frozen behind a display, watching. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification, too loud in the quiet. I flinched, looked down for a second, thumbed it silent. When I looked back up, the window was empty. No footsteps, no shadow walking away, just gone. I went straight to the monitor. 4 angles, grainy black and white, entrance, main aisle, side aisle, back hallway. I rewound the last 5 minutes. On the screen, the front of the store stayed completely empty. No man in a hoodie, no hand on the glass. While I was still trying to make sense of that, the feed glitched again. For 1 frame, maybe half a second, it showed me. Same uniform, same apron, standing at the register, counting cash. Timestamp, 2 nights earlier. Then it snapped back to live. I told myself it was a software bug. Old system, cheap cameras. Still, I shut the office door before I finished counting. The lock on that thin, hollow core door felt like a joke. I turned off the sales floor lights, 1 section at a time, until only the emergency strips glowed faintly. The store felt smaller, pressed in by its own inventory. I grabbed my keys and headed toward the back exit. The front door chime rang. Just once. Soft, cheerful. The same sound it made every time someone walked in during business hours. Except the front door was locked. I checked it myself. I was holding the only key. The air changed. It sounds stupid, but that's the only way I can describe it. The room felt thicker, like someone had just taken a deep breath and was standing there, waiting. I froze. From the center aisle came the faintest scrape, like a shoe sliding half an inch on tile. Not a crash, not a bump, just presence. I did not go toward it. I backed into the office instead, shut the door as quietly as I could, and locked it. My hands were shaking so hard it took 3 tries to dial the non-emergency police line. "I'm at the store name," I whispered. "I think someone's inside." The door's locked, but I heard... I stopped. What was I going to say? I heard a chime that shouldn't ring, and air that felt wrong. The dispatcher said officers were on the way. Stay put. Don't engage. So I watched the cameras. For a minute, the feeds were boring. Empty aisles, empty entrance, empty hallway. Then something appeared. No door opened. No frame flickered. 1 second, the front part of the store was empty. The next, there was a figure at the edge of the aisle, just inside the camera's view. Tall, hood up, edges blurred like the focus was off. He didn't move, didn't turn, just stood there, perfectly still, like he was posing for the worst portrait ever taken. The timestamp in the corner started to spin. Date and time cycled so fast it was unreadable. Last week, last month, last year, like the system couldn't decide when this was happening. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't look away. After what felt like forever, but was probably a few seconds, his head lifted toward the camera. It didn't zoom. The resolution didn't suddenly sharpen, but my brain filled in details anyway. The sense I got wasn't stranger's face. It was my own features, pulled and smeared under that hood. Too long in some places, too short in others. Like someone had taken me apart and put me back together wrong, then scrubbed out the actual details. Recognition and revulsion at the same time. My eyes watered. I blinked, and the monitor showed empty aisles again. When the officers finally knocked on the back door, I nearly screamed. They swept the store, checked every aisle, both doors, the small stockroom. Nothing disturbed, one of them said. Everything's locked up tight. Could have been someone rattling the door and running off. These plazas attract weirdos. I almost told them about the camera, about the timestamp, about the not quite me face. Instead, I just nodded, signed their form, and watched their taillights vanish into the highway traffic. Ron was more mad about the police cars than about me being scared. "We don't need that kind of reputation," he said the next day. "It spooks customers. Next time, just call me first." "Would you have come in?" I asked. He didn't answer. I lasted 2 more weeks. Each closing shift got worse in ways that would sound minor to anyone who wasn't there. The chime went off twice on different nights, even though the door stayed still on camera. I'd be restocking and feel the unmistakable sensation of someone standing just behind me, this pressure, like another body in my space, only to turn and find empty air. Twice, while I was alone, the monitor flashed that same single-frame image of me at the register from earlier nights. Same posture, same stack of bills in my hand. The timestamp was different each time, stretched by a few minutes or hours, like the system was building out a whole catalog of my routines. My last night there, I bent down to grab something from under the counter and felt a breath against the back of my neck. Warm, close. No one was there. I handed in my notice the next day. Ron tried to argue. "You're overreacting," he said. "You're young, your imagination runs wild. Nothing's happened. You're fine." "I don't feel fine," I said, "and I don't want to be here when whatever this is decides to stop playing around." He rolled his eyes but let me go. Now, months later, I still have dreams about that office. Not about Ron, not about customers, about the monitor. In the dream, the 4 camera feeds are all me. Me shelving, me counting, me locking the door, me standing at the glass, hand pressed flat against it, hood up. The timestamp never settles. It just keeps spinning. Sometimes when it finally looks up in the dream, there's no face at all. Just the reflection of those aisles, perfectly stocked, stretching on forever. When I drive past that strip mall now, I tell myself not to look. I always do. The nail place is gone. The vape shop's lights buzz. My old store has a for lease sign, but the interior lights sometimes flicker on at night. I never see the watcher, but the lot looks wrong. Too still, like a paused video. Like whatever happened there is still happening on some loop, waiting for the right set of eyes to press play. And on nights when my apartment is dark and my phone is face down and it's too quiet, I'll hear that soft, friendly chime in my head. A door opening for someone, not for me. I used to think I was the stable one between me and my sister. She was the social one, always out, always posting, always orbiting other people. I was the one who liked staying in, who double-checked the locks, who knew where the breaker box was and when the rent was due. We joked that if our lives were a horror movie, she'd be the one running toward danger with friends, and I'd be the one rolling my eyes from the couch, safe at home. We rented this small 2-story house in one of those copy-paste neighborhoods where the developers change the paint color and call it variety. Every driveway was the same, every lawn equally tired. People waved if our trash cans happened to line up, but that was it. It felt anonymous in a comfortable way, like existing inside a wallpaper pattern. When my sister booked a week-long trip to Florida with her friends, I was almost relieved. No passive-aggressive arguments about dishes, no blasting music at 11 p.m., no strangers from her life drifting through my living room, just me, my routines, my noise level. "I'll text you my flight info," she said, hauling her suitcase to the Uber. "Try not to burn the place down." "Try not to bring home anything incurable," I shot back. We laughed. It felt like a temporary reset button. The first day alone, I cleaned on autopilot, wiped counters, moved the couch 3 inches to the left like I'd always wanted, opened windows to let the air cycle. The house felt bigger, but in a good way. My footsteps echoed differently. Looking back, I keep thinking, the house expanded just enough to fit one more presence I hadn't invited. It was mid-afternoon when someone knocked. Bright daylight, neighbor lawnmowers in the distance, totally unthreatening. My sister orders from online shops like it's a sport, so I assumed it was a package. I didn't even hesitate. I went straight to the door and opened it without checking. Standing there was a man I absolutely did not recognize. 40s maybe. Dark jacket despite the mild weather, washed out jeans, hands empty. No box, no envelope, no ID badge, no company logo. Everything about him was aggressively generic except his eyes. Those locked onto mine in a way that felt practiced. Can I help you? I asked. He just stared for a beat too long, like my face was a test question. Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It looked like he'd rehearsed the motion in a mirror. "I'm looking for Anna," he said. My sister's name landed like a physical object between us. I hadn't said it. It wasn't on the mailbox. Our last name wasn't anywhere outside. My brain did that thing where it flips through explanations way too fast. Friend of hers, co-worker, delivery mix-up, stalker. "She's not here," I managed. "Who are you?" He let the question hang there. No answer, just that slight tilt of the head, like I'd thrown off his script. "Oh," he said finally. "I must have the wrong day." The wrong day? The way he said it made my skin crawl, like we were supposed to have some appointment I knew nothing about. He turned away without waiting for more. No, sorry. No, wrong house. Just a quiet pivot down the porch steps. He walked down the sidewalk at this calm, unhurried pace, never looking back. I watched him through the window until he disappeared around the curve of the cul-de-sac. No car door, no engine, just gone somewhere that wasn't his house, because I knew everyone's car on our street and I had never seen his. That night, I triple-checked the locks, told myself he was a mix-up, a weird neighbor, a confused delivery guy. But underneath all that logic was a tight, coiled feeling I didn't have a name for yet. The sense that he hadn't been surprised to find me there, just mildly inconvenienced that it wasn't her. The second night, the house felt different, not obviously. The lights were the same, the furniture was where I'd put it, the hum of the fridge unchanged. But underneath that was this subtle wrongness, like walking into a room where someone just had a heated conversation and left. The air buzzed with something unsaid. I went to bed later than usual, scrolling until my eyes hurt just to avoid the quiet. My bedroom is on the second floor, window facing the thin strip of dirt and fence between our house and the neighbors. There's nothing under that window. No ledge, no tree branch, nothing to stand on. Around 1 a.m., I woke up to a sound that my brain initially folded into a dream. A soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. Not loud, not random. It had a tempo. I lay there staring at the dark, trying to locate it. It wasn't the pipes. It wasn't the fridge. It wasn't the house settling. It was coming from my window. The tapping continued at the exact same pace, like someone drumming fingernails on glass while they thought. My heart started beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. I kept telling myself, wind, debris, a branch. We don't have a tree near that wall. I couldn't bring myself to jump up and yank the blinds. I slid my hand slowly toward my phone on the nightstand and watched the sliver of space where the window's shadow cut across the wall. Tap, tap, tap. It went on for maybe a full minute. Then it stopped. Not gradually, not like something swinging away. Just off. I lay there frozen, counting to 100 in my head, then 200. Finally, I forced myself to get up and peek through the side of the blinds. Nothing. just the faint shape of the fence and the neighbor's siding catching a bit of distant streetlight glow. No movement. No branch scraping. The next morning, in the full cruelty of daylight, I checked the window from outside. 3 faint vertical smears ran down the outside of the glass, spaced like finger widths, like someone had rested their hand near the top and slid it down slowly. I tried to dismiss it as dirt, rain, whatever carried dust, but that part of me that had tensed when the man said my sister's name tightened another notch. I didn't tell her. What was I going to say? Hey, hope Florida's fun. Some guy who knows your name might be tapping on my window. I didn't want to be the one freaking out over nothing. The problem is, nothing had started developing habits. It was the 4th night when he stopped hinting and started personalizing. I got home from work just after sunset. The neighborhood was in that low-activity lull. Kids inside, porch lights on, TV flickers visible through curtains. Our house looked normal from the outside. Nothing broken, no open windows, no obvious damage. The front door was still locked exactly how I'd left it. The key turned smoothly. For a split second, I let myself relax. Then I walked into the living room. The TV was on. We don't have cable, just a streaming stick that defaults to a home screen. But the screen was filled with static. Not a no-signal graphic, not a menu. Pure black and white noise, like someone had gone out of their way to find that dead channel. The volume was barely audible, just a low hiss under the hum of the lights. I hadn't used the TV that day. I'm obsessive about turning it off when I leave. Okay, I said out loud. Okay, maybe power flickered, maybe. I turned toward the shelves next to it and the words died in my throat. Every framed photo on the living room wall had been turned to face the wall. All of them. Grad photos, vacations, my parents. The frames were still hanging, but the photos were pressed flat against the paint, backs facing out. Every photo. Except one. On the end table by the couch sat the picture of me and my sister from last year. Us at some festival, sweaty, sunburned, laughing at something off camera. It was the only photo in the room still facing forward. Someone had taken a pen and neatly circled my sister's face. One clean loop around her head. Not a scribble, not vandalism. A mark of focus. Targeting. I checked every door, every window, every closet on autopilot. No signs of forced entry. No pried latches, no broken locks. Nothing missing that I could see. My jewelry box, our laptop, my wallet, everything was still where it belonged. Whoever had been there hadn't come for stuff. They'd come to say, I can get in. I know who lives here. And I am interested in her. My hands shook so hard when I called my sister that I almost dropped the phone. She answered on the second ring. Bar noise and ocean waves in the background. What's up? She shouted over the din. Do you know a guy in his 40s? I started, then realized how insane that sounded. Dark jacket, kind of average looking, maybe brown hair? She snorted. Wow, that narrows it down. Why? I told her about the man at the door, the way he'd said her name, the tapping, the photo. Her tone shifted from amused to defensive. I don't know anyone like that. I haven't given our address to anybody except for job stuff and deliveries. You're freaking yourself out. Are you sure? I pressed. Like, completely sure? Yeah, I'm sure, she snapped. Then softer. Look, I'm sorry, but I really don't know who you're talking about. We hung up with her telling me to call the landlord if I was that concerned. He, of course, brushed it off when I texted. Probably kids, maybe a glitch. He'd swing by and check the lock sometime. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time since moving in. The tiny click felt like drawing a line that wasn't going to matter to someone who'd already crossed all the others. It was somewhere around 3 a.m. when the house woke me up. Not a loud bang, not glass breaking. That would have been simpler. No, it was the subtle things that did it. The particular creak of our hallway floorboard, the one I step on every morning on my way to the bathroom. Creak. Then another. Slower. Someone walking down the hallway outside my room. I lay there in the dark, suddenly wide awake, every hair on my arm standing up. I grabbed my phone and clutched it in both hands, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. The footsteps stopped just outside my bedroom door. The gap under the door went darker, someone's feet blocking the light from the nightlight in the hallway. The doorknob jiggled once, a polite test. Then again, with more pressure, turning as far as the lock would allow. The lock clicked in protest. The knob strained but didn't give. Whoever was on the other side held it there for a beat, as if feeling the resistance, as if confirming, locked this time. I was holding my breath so hard my ribs hurt. In that silence, my phone suddenly buzzed. A text from my sister replying to something I'd sent earlier. The vibration sounded deafening in the dark. I dared a glance at the notification. A photo of her on a beach, time-stamped, her and her friends smiling with drinks. She was very clearly nowhere near my house. Then I heard it. A man's voice, right outside my door, low and too familiar in tone. Anna? He said her name like he'd said it before, not questioning who she was, not mispronouncing. It had that mix of affection and annoyance you use for someone you're used to dealing with. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat had locked up. The shadow under the door shifted, weight moving from one foot to the other. I could picture him standing there, head slightly tilted, listening. Anna, he repeated, softer this time. In the silence that followed, my mind did something horrible. It tried to fill in the backstory. How many times had he come when none of us were home? How many nights had he walked that same hall, stood at that same door, expecting her to open it? After what felt like years but was probably less than a minute, the pressure on the knob eased. The shadow slowly receded. The floorboard creaked again, footsteps moving away down the hall. I stared at the door until sunrise. Never called 911. Never left the bed. There was a part of me, twisted as it sounds, that was terrified of making whatever this was official, and then being told it didn't count because there was no broken glass, no bruises, no body. When the light started to creep through the blinds, I finally unlocked my door and stepped into the hallway. Empty. Everything exactly where it should be. For a second, I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed all of it. Then I saw the living room. Every lock was still engaged. Front door deadbolt, back door chain, windows latch shut. No screens disturbed. Nothing obvious out of place. Except for the photo. The picture of my sister and me, the one he'd already edited, was no longer on the end table. It was lying flat on the coffee table in the center of the room, waiting like an object in an evidence bag. There were now 2 circles in blue pen on the glossy surface, one around my sister's face, one, added sometime between me locking my door and the sun coming up, around mine. Neat, deliberate. You're included now. I picked it up with the corner of my sleeve, as if touching it barehanded would somehow link me more directly to whoever had done this. I told my sister everything again. Every detail, every sound. Sent her a photo of the marked picture. She was quiet a long time. I swear to you, she finally said, voice thin over the line. I don't know who that is, but I've had this weird feeling lately, like someone's been, I don't know, around. I thought I was just being paranoid. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Same reason you didn't, she said. Because nothing had technically happened. I moved out a month later, found a smaller place, worse location, higher rent. I didn't care. I left my sister the lease and the landlord's indifference. There was no official complaint, no police report with weight behind it. Just a story that sounded, from the outside, like anxiety spun out of control. There are nights in my new place when I swear I hear faint tapping on the window. Not loud enough to be sure, just soft enough that I might be imagining it. Sometimes, just on the edge of sleep, I hear someone in my head say my sister's name in that practiced tone. The part that keeps me awake isn't the idea that he might find us again. It's the dawning realization that he didn't improvise any of this. The way he said, "I must have the wrong day." The way he knew her name, the rhythm of his knocks, the familiarity in his voice outside my bedroom door. He acted like this was something he'd done before, like our house was part of a route, a loop he walked now and then, except this time for once someone was actually home to notice. When my father died, he left the lake cabin to my sister Claire and me. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since the night before my engagement party, when Claire had an affair with my fiancé. I told them both to get out of my life. The anger didn't fade overnight, and now, weeks after Dad's funeral, we were stuck sharing a cabin neither of us remembered fondly. Driving up the winding road, memories of summers long gone clashed with the resentment still burning in my chest. Claire kept chatting in the passenger seat about redecorating, planting flowers, maybe even repainting the deck. I only nodded, staring out at the mist over the lake. The cabin looked like Dad had left in a hurry, or like someone had been living there secretly. Couch cushions were disturbed, cupboard doors left open, cans stacked in odd patterns. Muddy footprints led from the back door straight to the master bedroom. Claire laughed it off. "Maybe Dad had a caretaker, or someone came to check on the place," she said, brushing her blonde hair behind her ear. That night, though, it became impossible to ignore. As I lay in bed, I heard slow creaking from the attic above. Step after step, deliberate, like someone testing the planks. The air smelled faintly of pipe tobacco. Dad's scent, but I knew he was gone. Claire was asleep beside me. I considered waking her, then decided against it. Something about the sounds didn't feel random. It was familiar, too familiar, and deep down, I knew the cabin held secrets. Secrets Dad hadn't told us, or maybe, secrets he had tried to hide. On the third morning, we searched the cabin, hoping to explain the smell and creaking. Nothing. No source of smoke. No one hiding. But while inspecting Dad's old desk, I found a loose floorboard. Beneath it was a box of letters. Claire and I opened them together, hesitating. Some letters were addressed to me, some to her, some to neither of us. Many were never sent. But the content was disturbing. Dad had written about Claire, ruining everything. About me being too blind to see her true nature. About hearing footsteps at night, seeing someone standing on the dock at 3 a.m., whispering outside his door. I read one aloud, voice shaking. "She comes into my room at night now. She says she wants what I stole from her. I was wrong to leave her behind." Claire gasped. "Dad, hallucinating maybe? I don't know." I whispered. That night, the attic creaking returned. This time, it was slower, more deliberate. Someone was descending the steps, testing each plank. My heart raced. I nudged Claire awake. Her eyes widened as she heard the steps approaching. We hid behind the kitchen counter, frozen. A low, familiar female voice whispered, "Asterisk, asterisk, I want what's mine. Asterisk, asterisk." The footsteps turned sharply toward us. We didn't wait to see more. We bolted, packed a bag, shoved our feet into sneakers, and drove through the night, leaving the cabin and the lake behind. Claire cried silently, gripping the steering wheel. I tried to reassure her. "It's just Dad's old fears. Maybe the wind, shadows, memories." She shook her head. "You don't get it." It was her voice. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a single message from Claire. I braced myself, expecting panic or anger. It was a picture of the cabin's bedroom. The bedsheets were pulled back. On the pillow, a lock of Claire's hair arranged in the shape of my initials. I dropped the phone, my stomach twisting. She's back," I whispered. Claire didn't respond to my follow-up texts. Not once. I called her, left voicemails. Silence. I told Mark about the cabin story, trying to find logic in the terror. "Maybe it's a prank," he said. "Maybe someone found the letters and is trying to scare you." But his voice lacked conviction. At night, I slept with the lights on, checking every corner of my apartment, every hallway, every window. The creaks of old pipes became footsteps. Shadows along the walls stretched like fingers. Then, last night,
It happened. A muddy footprint appeared outside my bedroom door. I froze. It wasn't mine. Not Claire's. I stepped back, breathing shallow. The smell hit me first wet earth, lake mud. Then I heard it. A slow, deliberate shuffle. Someone was pacing just outside, testing the floorboards like Dad's letters had described. I grabbed my phone to call the police. Signal weak. Nothing. The voice came then, clear, low, and chilling. Asterisk, asterisk, you can't hide what's mine. Asterisk, asterisk, I realized it had followed us. It had left the cabin behind, and now, it was here. I spent the night in the corner of my living room, phone in hand, flashlight under my chin. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floor felt amplified. At 3:13 a.m., the footsteps paused right outside my bedroom. My breath caught. Then, silence. Too perfect. I whispered to myself, maybe it's a burglar, maybe it's nothing. Then I saw it. A shadow stretching along the hallway, tall and humanoid, but moving wrong, like a marionette. I could almost make out the shape of long hair. I tried to move. My legs refused. The shadow advanced, each step deliberate, echoing in my skull. You took what wasn't yours, the voice whispered, dripping venom. The phone slipped from my hand. The flashlight flickered. I grabbed a chair and held it between me and the shadow. Then it stopped. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then, a whisper from the corner. Asterisk, asterisk, I've always been here. Asterisk, asterisk. I scrambled to the door, flinging it open. The hallway was empty. Footprints in the mud led nowhere. I realized the terror wasn't supernatural. It wasn't magic. It wasn't Dad or Claire. It was something human, patient, observing, waiting, and it wasn't finished. I couldn't sleep for days. I stayed awake, lights on, doors locked, yet every shadow, every creak, made me jump. I avoided calling Claire. There was no answer, just silence. Her disappearance mirrored in the eerie presence that had followed us home. I researched the cabin, Dad's past, Claire's old friends. Nothing concrete, but one thing was clear. Someone had been in that cabin before us, hiding, waiting. Someone obsessed. Someone meticulous enough to follow us across town. Last night, the muddy footprint returned. Outside my bedroom door again. I opened it slowly. Nothing. Just silence. Then I noticed a folded note on the floor. My handwriting, not mine. It read, asterisk, you can't protect what's mine. I've been patient long enough. Asterisk. I realized the horror of the letters. Dad hadn't been paranoid. He had known, in his own way, that someone, or sometimes times, was watching, waiting, and now, it had a new target, me. I stayed awake the entire night, flashlight in hand, heart hammering. Every floorboard creak was deliberate, every shadow a threat. The moral hit me hard. Secrets aren't buried. Betrayal leaves echoes that can't be erased. My past, Claire's past, even Dad's mistakes, they all followed me here, tangible, alive. I know one day it will come for me fully. I just hope by then, I'm ready. Secrets left unspoken and betrayals hidden have a life of their own. They fester, follow, and demand reckoning, sometimes in ways that cannot be controlled. Truth and honesty are not just for closure, they are for survival.
My name is Jasmine, but everyone in the neighborhood called me Miss J. At 15, house sitting for extra cash felt like a pretty good gig, especially on a Tuesday afternoon in July. The sun was pouring over the Halversons' manicured lawn, the scent of freshly cut grass hanging heavy in the air, and down the street, I could hear the rhythmic thwack of a tennis ball. The atmosphere was disarming, aggressively normal. I was watching 8-year-old twins, Max and Sam. Their mom, Mrs. Halverson, had called me around noon, apologizing profusely. Jay, I am so sorry, but I have a last-minute emergency meeting with the school board. It's unavoidable. Can you cover until 7? I agreed immediately. More hours meant more money toward the used car I desperately wanted. She seemed rushed, maybe a little stressed, but nothing out of the ordinary. She gave the boys a quick hug, told me the pizza was already paid for, and sped off in her SUV. The boys and I were sprawled out in the family room, building some ridiculously complex Lego spaceship. Max was arguing with Sam about the placement of a fin when I heard it. A soft, metallic shh. It was the sound of the sliding patio door opening, followed by a quiet thud as it slid shut. "Did you guys invite anyone over?" I whispered, putting down my piece of Lego. Max shook his head, his eyes wide. Mom said no one was allowed. The Halversons were very strict about that. I told the boys to stay put and silent. I crept toward the hallway leading to the kitchen, my heart starting to pound not from fear of a ghost or a slasher, but from the sudden, jarring intrusion into our quiet afternoon. I figured it was a neighborhood kid, or maybe a thief. I peered around the corner of the banister, looking down into the kitchen. It wasn't a stranger. It was Mr. Lyle Halverson. Lyle Halverson was an imposing man, usually quiet and polite, a retired professor who always wore a blazer. But the man in the kitchen now was different. He was standing perfectly still, his back to me, and he was covered in blood. It was dried, rusty brown blood spatter on his shirt and across the back of his neck, but it wasn't gushing. He looked utterly calm, methodical, as though he were performing a tedious household chore. He wasn't rushing, wasn't looking for valuables, and wasn't making a sound. He simply walked to the kitchen window and slowly, deliberately, pulled the blind down. Swoosh. Then he moved to the deadbolt on the garage door, flipped the lock, and engaged the top security chain. Click. Clack. I pulled back from the banister, retreating silently until my back hit the wall. The true horror of the situation hit me. The emergency meeting was a lie. Something had happened, something violent given the blood, and Lyle was home, but he wasn't well. He was locking us in. I crept back to the family room. Max and Sam were still whispering, confused. "Boys," I mouthed, "we have to be absolutely silent." I picked up the landline phone. Dead air. He must have cut the lines before coming inside, or maybe I was just praying that the storm had knocked out service. I checked my cell phone. No signal. The neighborhood's security bubble had burst. We were trapped in a silent house with a man who knew every hiding spot and every creak. He believed he was saving his family from the outside world, and I was just an obstacle, or maybe tragically, part of the family he intended to save. Lyle had disappeared from the kitchen, and the entire house had fallen into an unnatural silence. We had retreated to the master bedroom upstairs, the one room with a door that had a small, old-fashioned bolt lock. It wouldn't hold him for long, but it gave us a moment. The boys were crying silently, and I held them close, trying to project a calm I didn't feel. "We have to get out," I whispered. "The windows. Can we open the windows?" The window was old, heavy, and painted shut. It took all my strength to shove it up just enough to create a gap. The cool breeze on my face was a jolt of reality. We were on the second floor. It was a rough drop, but not impossible if we could break the fall. The problem was getting to the window without being heard. Lyle knew this house intimately. I pictured him downstairs, the hammer I had briefly glimpsed tucked into his waistband, waiting patiently. I knew that the second-to-last step on the main staircase always squeaked, and the third floorboard outside the master bath always groaned. I moved first, pulling Sam after me. "Step lightly. Exactly where I step," I instructed. We navigated the obstacle course of the upstairs hall in slow motion. Creak. We froze. It wasn't the floorboard. It was the sound of a door opening downstairs, followed by a heavy padded thud from the landing. Lyle was now on the staircase. I pushed Sam and Max into the laundry room, which had a small window overlooking the roof of the garage. "Hide in here, under the linen basket. Don't make a sound no matter what you hear." I moved back toward the master bedroom, trying to draw him away from the boys. I stepped onto the infamous third floorboard. It gave a loud, agonizing groan. Too late. The floorboard had worked. It had bought me a moment. The methodical footsteps in the hall paused, then rerouted toward the master bedroom. I sprinted back into the room, slammed the door shut, and slid the bolt home. I didn't hide. I went straight for the window. I needed a distraction, something to make him believe I was still in the room. I snatched a heavy antique lamp off the nightstand and hurled it against the far wall. Crash! Almost immediately, the sound was followed by a heavy shoulder hitting the door. Bam! The old wooden frame groaned, and the bolt threatened to give. Bam! Again. The wood around the bolt cracked. I didn't have time to hesitate. I wrenched the window open wider, shoved the thick area rug underneath the sill to soften the edge, and looked out. The drop was 15 feet to a flower bed, but just beside the window was a thick, robust rose trellis climbing up the wall. I raced to the laundry room, pulling Sam and Max out. Quickly! Out the window! The trellis is right there! Max, being the braver twin, went first. I lowered him out, supporting his weight until his sneakers found purchase on the crossbars of the trellis. Go down fast. Keep going until your feet touch grass. Don't look back. Sam was next. He was crying and scared, but the sheer terror of the repeated BAM from the master bedroom was a powerful motivator. I lowered him too, watching until he was halfway down. I could hear the master bedroom door splintering behind me. I looked back. The door was buckling. Sam was almost at the bottom. Max was already running toward the neighbor's yard. Safety. They were safe. I had to go. I climbed onto the windowsill, my legs already dangling outside, searching for the trellis. I could hear the final, desperate cracking sound of the door frame giving way. I was halfway out when a piece of the door exploded inward, and I heard the heavy thud of the door hitting the wall. I froze, heart hammering. I hadn't looked back, but I knew he was there. I heard his breath, not frantic but slow and deep, right behind me. He wasn't rushing. He didn't need to. I was framed perfectly in the window, my back to him, one leg still inside the room. Leaving so soon, Miss J? His voice was a calm, low whisper, entirely devoid of anger or panic, which made it the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. I felt the sudden, chilling pressure of his finger on the back of my shoulder, the lightest touch imaginable. I turned my head just enough to see him. He was standing in the doorway, the shattered wood frame framing his figure. The hammer was now held loosely at his side, dripping slightly. His eyes were wide and focused, completely lost in his own reality. He had an expression of serene disappointment, like a father catching a child trying to sneak out after curfew. He raised his bloody hand to his own lips. His eyes held mine, conveying a warning that needed no words. He simply said, "Shh." The screen cut to black.